I just wanted to recap what CCG has taken an official position on. So first we had a yes on 2A. We have a yes on 4A, a yes on 4B. Those three are for Denver specifically. Then we have a yes on Colorado Amendment B and a no for Proposition 116 and 117. So just want to be really clear with those for anyone following along. Great, so those are all issues we've taken an official position on, but we're going to move on to the last four that are just kind of in line with a lot of our values and the work that we're all doing. With that, I'd like to introduce Roshan Bliss with Project Voice to speak about Amendment 76.
Great. Hi, I am Roshan. I'm with Project Voice, but I'm also serving my personal capacity as a member of the No on 76 campaign. The official name is the Campaign for Real Election Protection. And we are we're inviting Coloradans to vote no on Amendment 76 because Amendment 76 is an anti-immigrant proposition, to be quite frank, that would amend our Constitution to say that only a citizen who has attained 18 years of age can vote, whereas right now it says every citizen who has attained 18 years of age can vote. And we oppose this amendment for a bunch of different reasons, but the biggest one is that Amendment 76 actually, first, it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote in Colorado elections. It's true for every American election. It is not legal for non-citizens to vote. But the only legal change that any legal analysts have been able to determine Amendment 76 would have is to actually remove the right. It would disenfranchise over 24,000 17-year-olds who have the right as of now to vote in primary elections as long as they're going to be 18 by the election day. And this is a huge problem because we know research shows that 17-year-olds, or that the younger you are when you vote in your first election, the more likely that you're going to have a lifelong habit of continuing to vote in all elections. And I don't know if y'all have noticed, but voter turnout is a problem in this country and has been for generations. And often young people, have the lowest turnout rates. And we actually want and need, in many ways, for the health of our democracy, to encourage young people to vote as soon as possible, as early as possible in their life, because it has this knock-on positive effect for the generations to come in our democracy. And Amendment 76 would undo the law that was just passed last year that let 17-year-olds into primaries as long as they would be 18 by the election day. So we're encouraging people to vote no on 76, and you can learn more if you visit votenoon76.com or follow us on social media at votenoon76. And we would love your help spreading the word on those social media accounts and letting your friends know that this is a trick question and a deceptive amendment that was cynically placed there by anti-immigrant activists from Florida trying to meddle in Colorado's elections. And we hope you'll join us in voting no. And I'll stick around for questions.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. Next up, to talk about Proposition EE and also Proposition 113, we have Kevin Vick, who's the Vice President of Colorado Education Association.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin Vick. I'm the Vice President for the Colorado Education Association, just like Catherine said. The two items that we're talking about tonight, Proposition EE is a fairly straightforward idea. It's basically trying to close the loophole on our tobacco tax system overall. Generally speaking, we've had taxes on cigarettes and other tobacco products for many years in the state, and the Proposition EE will steadily increase those taxes to bring in more revenue. But then also, since our original tobacco taxes were put in place, um, this new phenomenon of vaping has come along. And there currently are no taxes on vaping of tobacco products, or tobacco products that are used for vaping. And so Proposition EE would close this, and the proceeds primarily will go to helping shore up the education budget. Right now, the education budget, like many have said tonight, is in dire straits. It took a huge hit during this coronavirus situation during the budget times this year, and it's slated to go even more severe in the future. Hopefully, what this will do is for the next 3 years, this will help stave off the most severe cuts in our education budget for this year. And then after that, all of the proceeds, minus the amount that's going to be used for tobacco education amongst teens and the general public, all of it is going to fund a universal preschool program here in the state, which is also direly needed as well. The inequities, the studies show obviously that the earlier we can get kids into a structured educational program, the earlier we can get kids into a preschool situation, the more successful they are throughout. And so that's primarily what funding will do after these first 3 years of the tax. We also know that vaping has become a really serious problem for particularly high school students right now. There is a ton of use, and so some of this money will also go to education efforts to help reduce that use that teens are doing. And then the second one is Proposition 113. Proposition 113 is called the National Popular Vote. And let me go back. We are asking you to vote yes on EE, hopefully giving that money to education. The second one is the National Popular Vote. This one we are also asking to vote yes on. And essentially what this does is it pledges Colorado's Electoral College delegates to vote along with the national, whatever the result of the national popular vote is. And if you think about it, the antiquated Electoral College system where each state is a winner-take-all situation really creates a situation where you disenfranchise huge numbers of people in states all over the nation. Imagine if you're a Democrat in Alabama, for example, your vote would never count towards the overall vote total for the president because of the winner-take-all system in the Electoral College. Same as if you're a Republican in New York, possibly. So essentially what this does is this is part of a national movement where states simply pledge their delegates to become pledge for the United States to actually become a real, more of a real democracy moving forward. And so that is primarily the essence of the two propositions. Obviously, I'm here for questions if you need them.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. Next up, we have Deborah Brown to speak about Proposition 118. Deborah is with Good Business Colorado.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having us this evening. So Proposition 118 is the creation of a paid family and medical leave program. And groups like 9 to 5 Colorado have been working for over a decade here in Colorado to get a benefit that most of the industrialized world has had in place for over 100 years. We are actually only one of 2 countries in the entire world. It's us and Papua New Guinea in a league of our own of countries that don't have something in place for when people need to take time off of work to care for themselves or a loved one to be able to do so. So what Proposition 118 will do is we'll create a statewide insurance program where business owners and workers together pay in very low premiums. And that enables people to take the time off when they need to care for themselves or a loved one. So oftentimes people think about the birth of a child, so paternity or maternity leave as the main reason why people would need to take paid time off from work, but actually taking care of oneself, a medical leave, is one of the greatest reasons people take leave in the 8 other states throughout the country where a paid family and medical leave program is in place. So the way the program would work is it would provide 12 weeks up to 16 weeks for a complicated pregnancy, but 12 weeks for up to 12 weeks, depending on whatever the leave requires. So for a pregnancy, for the birth of a child, or for bonding with a new adopted child, it would be up to 12 weeks of leave. If you have a injury where you need to have a surgery and the doctor recommends a 3-week recovery time, that's what CDLE would provide for you. And all of this can be done with 0.9% of wages split equally between employees and employers. So that's 0.45% for each. So just to give you a little sense of what those numbers break down to, for a low wage worker, that would be about $112 for the year. For a $75,000 employee, we're looking at $337 for the year, or just $6 a week. So again, you can see that the premiums are really affordable. That was really important to make sure that the lowest wage workers and our most slim margin businesses can all afford this program that everybody will jointly benefit from so greatly. The program, the job protection piece of it kicks in after 100 of days on the job with the same company. And to qualify for the benefit itself, you only need to have $2,500 in wages, which is the same as unemployment insurance. So it mirrors that program again to make it really accessible to employees, especially in our new economy, where people oftentimes work for so many different employers over the course of their careers. To make sure that your paid family and medical leave is not tied to a single employer is really important. The portability of this program is really important. For me, as Good Business Colorado, this is a program that my members have been working for since the inception of our organization, because so many businesses want to be able to take care of their employees, to be able to provide paid family and medical leave, but to do it by themselves, it's incredibly cost prohibitive. And what's available on the private market right now is really challenging for small businesses from an affordability standpoint, but also it doesn't really cover the type of caretaking that our families require today. So that's why Good Business Colorado is part of a coalition with hundreds of other organizations that are supporting Proposition 118, the Paid Family and Medical Leave ballot initiative, and we certainly would appreciate your support. And I'm also super happy to answer any questions.
Excellent, thank you. So that concludes kind of that portion. We will give some time for some questions about those 4 propositions that we just heard about.
All right, we're going to start at the top again with Rashawn. We did get a question about the impact you described on 17-year-olds. The question is, my ballot doesn't say anything about this issue with 17-year-olds. How does this happen with Amendment 7D6 without that explicitly included in the language?
Great question, and it's a little complicated. So let me explain. The ballot does not include any language about voting age because it is deceptively worded intentionally. So the whole sentence in Article 7, Section 2 of the Colorado Constitution reads beyond what is actually on your ballot. So it says, right now, it says every citizen of the United States who has attained 18 years of age. And it leaves off that who has attained 18 years of age. So right now, the word every can be interpreted by the courts and has been as permissive. It doesn't say right now, the Constitution of Colorado says once you're 18, you have to let them vote. It doesn't matter. It does not say you can't let them vote unless they're 18, which is how the Colorado Votes Act empowered 17-year-olds to participate in state elections, these primary elections. And so if you change that word to only a citizen who has attained 18 years of age, it becomes not permissive and makes it so that 18 is the absolute floor, that it's a clearer interpretation that you have to be 18 to vote in any election in Colorado whatsoever. Whereas right now it has a permissive interpretation with the word every. It's wonky and like in the weeds on how policy and the Constitution works. But that is why this amendment is intentionally deceptive. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Rashawn. We're getting a lot of questions, and I know we only have about 7 minutes left here. So let's get through at least one question for each panelist. If you can answer those in a matter of a minute or so, that would be great. And then we'll circle back for anyone who may want to stay on the line after 7. So we do have a question on EE. Can you speak to how this proposition would disproportionately impact low-income communities, or the impact that it would have on those communities?
Sure. So this was a thing that we on the CEA board did have quite a bit of a debate about, because it does show that sin taxes, and this is a sin tax for all intents and purposes, do have kind of a disproportionate effect on lower income people and people of color as well. But what we landed on was that there is very strong language to increase the cessation efforts in the state, meaning that a good percentage of the proposition money will, in addition to going to education, will also be going to increasing the efforts of the state to get people to quit smoking in general. And so given that this very strong language is in the actual proposition, and also given that the money is going to education, that's what caused us to tip the scales and vote in favor. There's also very strong language in terms of getting the cessation efforts for teenagers as well, which we're all seeing as becoming a real problem amongst our teen population with the vaping. So something that just the funding isn't there to help take care of right now, but with this there will be.
Great, thank you, Kevin. And then we did have a question or two on 113, and they can be answered in one word. So I'm going to give them both to you. Is there an expiration date if other states don't sign on right away? And will the Colorado popular vote go to the winner of the national popular vote?
Yes, there's no expiration date. Once this is voted, we're like kind of put in line with the other states that have already voted. And then I believe there's a pretty significant portion. I don't know the exact number, but I know it's over 20 states have already passed a similar measure like this. And then what was the other question? Sorry.
I'm sorry, would Colorado's votes then go towards the Colorado popular vote, or go with the Colorado popular vote or the national popular vote?
This would make the delegates go with the national popular vote.
Great, thank you. And we got a number from Deborah as well, excuse me. Is this ballot measure as good as the bill you were supporting at the legislature? That one was compromised, this person believes, and lost support.
Yeah, great question. And thanks so much for asking it. So this bill very much, the ballot initiative really mirrors the recommendations of the task force, which was a really diverse group of individuals that came together to support the policy to make these policy recommendations. And it is much better than what we were looking at in the past legislative session, that many of the groups that have advocated for this policy for over a decade could not come to support. So this is way better than what we were looking at in the legislature last year, and very much more in line with the task force recommendations, and would be a really model policy for the country.
All right, we do have a few more questions. Actually, Deborah, I'm going to field one more to you, and then we'll wrap up in the next 3 minutes here. How will 118 affect small businesses, 150 employees, for example? How will they be affected financially? There are some small businesses who are telling their employees to vote no because they'll have to pay more in taxes.
Yeah, great question. So one thing I didn't mention is businesses with less than 10 employees don't actually pay into the premiums. Their employees are still covered and their employees still pay into the program, but and that's what we consider a small business. For businesses that are already doing their own thing, they can also continue to do their own thing as long as it meets the minimum criteria. I want to make sure everyone else has time to answer other questions, so I'll leave it at there, but I would be happy to talk more about that to anyone who's interested.
Well, I know there are a lot of folks representing teachers on the line, and I'm a former teacher myself, so I'm going to ask this, and apologies if you did address it. Are teachers included in the program created by 118?
Yeah, so because you can't have an unfunded mandate in Colorado, local government entities do have the option to opt in, but they aren't mandated like the private businesses are. I should also mention sole proprietors can opt into the program, but they're not mandated to be in. So if a local school district opts in, then they would be included. And if they don't opt in, then the individual teachers can still opt in individually to have the coverage, but they don't get the job protection that is afforded under the program.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. And thanks, everyone. I think we did get to pretty much all the questions. I'm going to toss it back to Catherine and Brock to wrap up for the evening.
Awesome. Thanks, Mo. I just want to wrap up by thanking all of our panelists. There's a lot of expertise on this Zoom. And I think this was super helpful to get to kind of dive a little deeper into the so many questions that are on our ballot. So thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much to everyone who came to participate. The last thing I want to say is go vote, make a plan, drop off your ballot, mail it in before, they're kind of recommending that before the 26th, you get it in the mail so that it arrives in plenty of time. The very last day of this election is November 3rd, and the last time to vote is November 3rd at 7 p.m. So make a plan and go do it. Thanks so much for Mo and Brock and everybody that helped put this together, and have a good night.